let's just poke around a little bit here. Let's go to components because I think that's a thing that a lot of people associate with design systems. If I go to a component like let's go to the inline alert. There's a bunch of things here that might be familiar to you, and there's a bunch of things here that might not be familiar to you. If you've browsed design system reference sites before, you know that a lot of them have a lot of similar things. So they have the name of the component at the very top. They have a description about what that component is, and a lot of them have sort of a screenshot or an image or a preview of what that component might be. So here are some examples of the inline alert in Eventbrite's design system Marmalade. Then in design systems, they usually have some sort of installation. And now this is the kind of design system that we implement in code. So for some of you who are engineers or have some knowledge of programming, you see some things like this. You see some import statements. And you know what that means. That's basically how you use this component in code. For some of you that don't know what that means, we're going to get into that in week 4 when we talk about design system tooling. So we're going to talk about what does this even mean? Where does it go? What language is this part of? So this is an example of some React code. We'll walk through all the way from scratch what a design system in React is and what it's going to be and how you can make one. For those of you who are not engineers, part of the work here is not going to be able to make one, but just to understand how your engineering counterpart might make one. So the goal of the course would be to get you to understand the same mental model that your counterparts, if you're a designer, your counterparts in engineering and product and writing and QA and content and all that are going to have. And then same thing for engineers. I want you to understand the mental model that your designer might be having when they're creating components in Figma and things like that. So we'll talk about how to use reference sites like this. We'll even talk about how to make reference sites like this. So we'll talk a lot about documentation and chronicling and how you get to a design system that actually has things like a website with components that can be installed, that have things like variants, as you see here, and props and properties and all of those kinds of things. So if this stuff looks intimidating to you, that's okay. It is intimidating if you don't know it, haven't seen it before. By the end of the course, you'll be very familiar with all of this kind of stuff, and you'll be able to actually make one of these yourself. Perhaps not in code if you're not a coder, but an equivalent of this for design. If you are a coder or a programmer, you'll definitely understand this and be able to make one of these too. So that's one example that I want to share. Another example that I'll share is the MUI, which is Material Design's sort of UI component. And component library and design system. So the same kind of thing exists here. If you go to MUI.com, it shows you how to use the material design system in code. If we click get started, there's a lot of instructions here and documentation on how you get started using a design system in code. One of the things that I want to mention is in our first week, one of the things that we'll be talking about is what even is a design system? I know that's a question that a lot of us have because as an industry, we haven't really centralized on what is a design system. So actually in the first week, we'll go over 7 or 8 different kinds of design system. This is one kind. It's a React library in code. That's one kind of design system. Other kinds of design system exist in Figma as libraries. Other kinds of design system exist as brand identity and visual identity. So we're going to explore all of those kinds of design systems in week 1, and then we're going to hone in on 1 or 2 to focus on for the rest of the course. So if you don't even know what a design system is, or you're looking at this and you're going like, this isn't what I mean when I say design system, that's okay. You're not alone in all of that. We're definitely going to go deep into that in week 1 and just talk about all the different kinds, and then say for the design system that we're trying to make here, this is the kind that we're focusing on. And that's a recommendation that I make to every team that I work with on design systems is you all, before you do anything, the team has to agree on what kind of design system they're talking about. Otherwise, somebody will say a thing and somebody else will mean something different or think that they're meaning something different. So we want to create that shared vocabulary. That's a common phrase in design system land. So we'll talk about what that vocabulary is, and then we'll come to some agreements on what we're going to use for the rest of the course. Last thing that I'll show you here, and then we'll jump into a Q&A. I'll share my screen, a different screen in a different way. So bear with me as I get that set up, please. All right. So you all should be seeing Figma now in front of you, and I want to show you an example of a different kind of design system. This is the iOS UI kit for Figma. This was created by Joey Banks. And Joey Banks is actually one of the industry leaders that you'll be talking to, I think, in week 4 or 5. So you'll have the opportunity to ask him questions. Joey made this really amazing open source project called the iOS UI kit for Figma. And it's on the Figma community. You can download it, you can use it. If I go through the panel here of pages, you'll see we've got colors and typography and components and templates. I'm going to go into the components section. And if I zoom out to a level where you're not supposed to be able to make out any details here, look at the immense amount of work that went into creating a design system that is scalable, reusable, where you can copy and paste and include symbols and components in other compositions, be able to change them in one place, and it cascades everywhere. Joey is so awesome at creating things like this, creating design systems in Figma. This is a great example. Even before the course, if you wanted to take a look at this file, you can just find it on the Figma community. It's called iOS 16 UI Kit, and make sure you find the one that Joey Banks has made. And you can start to poke around in this stuff to understand how it's made. If we dive into some of the components in detail, so let's go in here. If we grab some of these components, you'll see all of these things in the panel here. We see parent components, we see symbols. Some of these things have auto layout. We see fonts and styles and dynamic content and all of these kinds of things. There's so much that you can do in Figma. Some of those things are really beneficial for design systems, and some of those things are less beneficial. So one of the things that we'll talk about in week 4 when we talk about the tools for design systems is actually what of those things can you ignore, which of those things aren't very useful or are useful for other things, and then what things really make a difference when you're designing and creating and then ultimately using design systems that are shared. So I'll help you focus on what things are really important, what things you need to learn, what things you don't need to learn. A lot of you have done other courses in Figma. The Dribbble product design course is a great one as a prerequisite. And so some of you might have some prerequisite knowledge from things like that. We'll carry those over into design system world. We'll focus on some of those things, and I'll tell you what you don't need to focus on. And ultimately, the point of all of that is to make sure that you can start to create screens and create things that people can use. So Joey has done a great job in this UI kit of creating components that then combine into full interfaces that people use, and knowing that if they change in the components part of Figma, that they will update in all of the different parts where they're actually used. That's really the beauty of a design system, is that it's all connected. And when change happens, which to me is the most important thing about systems and design systems, when change happens, you're ready for it. So we'll talk about all of the ways to do that in Figma, all the ways to do that in code, and you'll have a really good understanding of how design systems work in our world and how they can apply for your team or for the things that you work on. So that's my little spiel here to kind of tell you about what you can be prepared for this course. I hope you're excited about it. I'm excited about it too. I'll stop sharing my screen here, and we'll just do a Q&A for the rest of the time here. So I see you all have added some questions in the Q&A section. Please continue to do that and add to them. And Madeline and I will just kind of go through some of those questions, the ones that all of you want to have answered. So hopefully that gives you that kind of whets your appetite for what you might learn in the course. And of course, if there's any other questions that you might have, please post it in the chat and we'll answer them now.
Thank you so much, Dan. That was a great overview. Just want to call out that the Figma screen was a bit blurry. I've got a few messages from folks. However, I put the link to the Figma Joey Banks's UI kit in the chat. So feel free to just grab that and look at that in your own time. It was more of like a demonstration of what you could be seeing in the course. So yeah, feel free to grab that link in Figma, and apologies that the screen was blurry. Something that I forgot to say before we get into the Q&A, Dan, is that this course is starting on the February 13th. So we have a few months here before it starts. So if anyone isn't familiar with code but wants to ramp up and join the course, then please do reach out to education@dribbble.com and we could send you some resources to make sure that you will hit the ground running in the course. Another thing I wanted to share is that we do have an exclusive 30% discount just for you guys in this info session at the moment. So I'm sharing it in the chat now. Please grab it if you can. It's, like I said, exclusive for you. We're running a 25% discount for the general public. So keep this under wraps and make sure to grab your money off with this 30% link. Final thing before we get into Q&A is that, as Dan said, we do have discounts for teams. So if you want to bring your team and learn alongside your design team, then reach out to us at education.com. We could give you a steeper discount if you get 5 or more teammates involved. So use your education budget and your sort of development budget from your companies to come to this course. Great. Looking at our Q&A, we've got Timo Wang, who has 17 upvotes. Good question. How similar is this course to Dan's Super Friendly Design Systems 90-day workbook?
Yeah, good question, Timo. Thank you for asking that. The workbook is advanced. So the workbook is for teams that are already working together on design systems. It's teams that understand all the fundamentals of design systems, and just need like a playbook of like, these are the things that we need to execute on. This course is much more a beginner and intermediate level course. So for those of you that are like, I think I understand design systems. I could use a better base for those things, and then building on top of that base. That's what this course is for. And then I would say, and as part of this course, I'll give you all a coupon code for those of you that join the course. We'll have coupon codes for that workbook as well. So that's something that helps you take it to the next level. But that workbook, excuse me, is a very advanced workbook for teams that have done this for a while and are looking to take their already somewhat mature design system to an even higher level of maturity. So, take it with a grain of salt that way. This course will help you with some of the fundamentals about design systems, understanding them well, and then building on top of that. And then the workbook is really for teams that have done it for a while.
Awesome. Sounds like the workbook is a lot more advanced. Great. Our next question is from Gen Z. Demir. So it's about career services and if there are any available after completion of the course, such as resume assistance, job, or mock interviews. So I could speak to what Dribbble does on our end after you graduate, and then Dan, maybe if there's anything within the course that might help folks get a job, you could speak to that. So after you graduate from the course, you're given a certificate from Dribbble that you could put on your LinkedIn and on your Dribbble profiles. And I believe, Dan, you're offering a certificate as well to show
That's
that
right.
you've been through a sort of industry standard high level of education. We as Dribbble also put you on our public page of graduates, specifically graduating from our design systems course. We then send that page around to our hiring managers. So we have tens of thousands of hiring managers that we work with at Dribbble. So your profile will be displayed on this graduates page, filterable by the course that you've taken, which is design systems. And on that page, in your Dribbble profiles, you'll have your capstone project that you work on during this course. So we do facilitate emails to our hiring managers saying, check out these most recent graduates. They've gone through this extremely high level of rigorous teaching, and they are ready to be employed or get promotions. So that's a little bit that we do on our end, connecting you with the hiring managers, giving you a badge on your Dribbble profile as well that says that you've been through this course, and giving you a certificate. Dan, is there anything within the course that could help folks land a job in terms of the content?
Yeah, one thing that I'll add there is like, this is exactly why we have the mentor program that we have too, is that as you're going to be working with your mentors week to week, I encourage you to use your mentor for that as well. All of the mentors have industry experience, are working in the industry. They understand kind of the lay of the land of design systems and hiring and all of that kind of thing. So they're the perfect opportunity for you to have those kinds of conversations with someone who knows kind of the landscape and can help you advance that way too. So please do take advantage of the mentor that you have, and are assigned to you on a week to week basis.
Great stuff. We have Eliza who is asking a great question. How do you balance creating design system from scratch versus adapting systems, an existing system like material?
So I'll give the short answer here. Of course, the course gives the long answer in weeks, I think 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, where we talk about creativity and we talk about starting from scratch and from templates versus using something. The short answer that I generally give to teams is, if you want your design system to last longer than 3 years, build it from scratch. If you want if you're okay with your design system not really lasting that long, 2 years or 3 years, then starting with a material or a bootstrap or an ant design or anything like that is pretty good. The reason for that is what I've seen with teams is that around the 2 to 3 year mark, they start to get into a level of customization and building bigger and better and more sophisticated things with the design system. And then they tend to start to fight the library that they started with. So they end up, if you're using material or using you know, any library that's really great out there for getting you started, you end up actually using less of it than you end up taking more out of it than you actually end up using at that point. And at that point, a lot of developers and designers start to go like, it's actually not working for me because I'm sort of creating things from scratch anyway, but now I have to figure out how it works in the system. So the guideline that I generally give to teams is 3 years or less, start, you know, use something out of the box like material or something like that. Usually 3 years afterward, you know, if you want it to last more than 3 years, it's probably a good idea to invest in creating something from scratch. It'll be slower to get started, but it'll have more longevity. So that's the general guideline that I tend to give.
Thank you. So Fatima's asking about the job opportunities as well. Covered that in the last question. Pavel, can you discuss with the mentors our projects outside of the capstone project? So from what I know from the product design course and our UI design course, which has this same model of mentorship, and weekly mentorship, that you have that live interaction with mentors, they really are a support for you. You're also in a Slack group with them, and you could ask them, industry questions. Obviously, the 2 hours is focused on learning and building your capstone project, but they're there as a resource and an industry expert. So you for sure can take that time in some Q&A sections and in Slack to ask about other projects. Of course, this is, like I said, a real value of our course, the fact that you do get that interactive face-to-face time with industry experts and mentors to specifically help you grow. So yeah, of course. Okay, so Manu, 8 upvotes. What would you recommend to a junior UX UI designer? Practice, start looking for a job, learn code, front end. A bit of a generalized question, but are you able to speak to that one?
Yeah, I can. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by it, so I'll answer the couple of variations that I assume. So one is the one way that I'm taking that is, what would I recommend to a junior UX UI designer to start in design systems? And the first thing that I would recommend, and actually this is a thing that we're going to do, this is the homework assignment for week 1 of the course, is to use a design system out there and try to make something with it. Right. So just kind of understand the space a bit more. You could do that right now. You could start on that today. You don't have to take the course to do that. Go grab, if you're a designer and you don't know code, go grab the material UI kit in the Figma community, or find any UI kit or design system in the Figma community, or anything that's open source out there. There are lots of free templates that you can download from lots of different websites. Just grab a design system from somewhere and try to use it. Try to make something with it. And what I would recommend is try to make something that you're familiar with. So for example, if you are familiar with apple.com because you go to apple.com a lot, try to redesign apple.com with the components in a design system, because I think that'll give you a lot of empathy for what it actually takes to make one. So before you even make one, start to use one and see what some of the challenges are that you have. Do you get challenged in documentation? You know, you just don't know how to use a thing. Is it hard to use components? Is it hard to edit them? So that's what I would recommend, you know, to anybody. The same thing applies in code. If you're an engineer or if you write code, grab a design system in code and start to make something with it and see where you get blocked. So that's going to be the homework assignment on week 1, and I'll give you some reading to do and some pointers on how to successfully do that. But that's where we start. Is we can't make a design system yet until we use one and kind of understand, or use a few and understand that. So that's one way that I take the question. The other way that I take the question is, what would I recommend to a junior designer, a UX designer, in general, to be a good designer, not necessarily on design systems? And I think practice is the key. Um, I think that I have learned, and when I am mentoring and when I ran my apprenticeship and was training junior designers and interns, well, what I would have them do a lot is just, it's kind of like when you learn to draw. How do you learn to draw? You trace a bunch of things. Like, that's one way to get really good at drawing. Put tracing paper on things that you like and trace them and see what you learn by tracing. You know, you might learn that, oh, this style that I like actually does shadows a particular way, or this style that I like really does the line work in a particular way. And then once you trace, after a while, you start to develop your own taste and your own style. And I think that's what sets apart very senior designers and creative directors and things like that, is they start to come into their own style. And so I don't think that you can do that well without tracing and practicing and imitating. So if you want to be better as a designer, I would just go look at websites that you like and start to recreate them. If you want to be better at Figma, if and you like apple.com, go remake apple.com in Figma and see what things are difficult for you, we'll see what things are hard for you, see what patterns jump out at you as you do multiple sites. I think the practice will take you a long way. So those are my two variations to that question. I'm not sure exactly which one you meant, but hopefully one or both of those answers were helpful.
Thank you, Dan. I also want to jump back to Fatima's question. I'm so sorry, Fatima, I skipped over you. I saw job opportunities and thought we'd addressed it, but this is a really great question. And I think it shows how valuable design systems are for employers now and that they're investing in them. So, Dan, I'd love to hear your thoughts alongside Fatima on, are there job opportunities focused in design systems only, or is this something companies didn't consider to have their own design systems at first, using just material design, for example, with some tweaks?
Part of the reason that we're doing this course right now is the timing is really good in the industry. Maybe it's just the chamber that I lived in, but everything I see on LinkedIn now is design system job openings. Lots of UI designer, design system job openings, senior designer, a product designer for design systems, engineer for design systems. So I'm seeing a ton of those openings, those job openings, and I think it's part of the zeitgeist of the industry understanding that design systems are valuable and that there are ways to maintain them, to create them, to have them actually impact business in a positive way. I think that's done for us because companies like Atlassian and Salesforce and Google, have kind of paved the way and basically said design systems are the thing that have led to some innovation for us and led to some really good things for us. So I think a lot of companies are starting to follow suit. Um, I don't know this for sure. I don't have data to support this. I think that one thing that I'm seeing is that, especially in Europe, there's a big trend right now for people to be interested in design systems. I think in the US, it's a little bit farther along. I think in Europe, it's just now starting to. So if you're a designer or an engineer in Europe, I think that you would be ahead of that trend by focusing on design systems right now. So I think the timing is right. I've never been really good at predictions. So, who knows? And with the economy, who knows? But I'm seeing a lot of different openings for design systems specifically, not just product designers and then do design system stuff on the side, but specifically roles to work on a design system team or even be the first designer, first engineer, or founding members of a design system team. So I think the timing is really good for all of this, which is partially why we decided we should do a course about it.
That's right. Thank you for the question, Fatima. So from Luke, we've got, would there be lessons, knowledge, and tips about how to manage and work with people on design systems, how to sell design systems to different departments, and how to cooperate with them?
Uh, a little bit in this course. There's not going to be a ton of it. When we talk about documentation, when we talk about reference websites, we're going to be talking about what things are attractive to other people and how do you talk to them about that. But it's mostly going to be along the lines of collaborating with your peers who are also practitioners. I've done other courses that focus on that. It starts to get a little bit outside that, and as we started thinking about how to integrate that here, it turned into a 16-week, 21-week course to incorporate some of those things in it. So maybe we'll do a part two of this course that's about kind of the dynamics and the politics of design systems as a follow up to this one. So we'll touch on it a little bit. We won't do too much. This course in particular kind of responded to a thing that I was seeing where people were asking for just nuts and bolts training on like how to create and maintain a design system. So this course is mostly focused on that. And even though we'll touch on some of the people and the processes of a design system specifically in week 2, where we'll talk about processes and workflow, a lot of the selling to stakeholders and doing that kind of stuff is kind of going to be saved for a later course.
Good stuff. The next upvoted question, 11 upvotes here for Benjamin. Interested in your general process and flow. So not necessarily just design systems, but interested in your process flow and how you align content, design, revisions, dev, product release. What works best? Content first?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a tough question. What I teach in this course, and we'll get into it in week 2. Week 2 is about processes and workflows. We're really going to try and take the spirit of agile, not the rituals and not the activities of agile per se, but we're going to take the spirit of agile. We're going to look a lot at the agile manifesto and some of the principles about agile and figure out how to apply that to design systems. So my general philosophy on design systems and the way that I'll teach it in the course is about everything being able to flow in at the right time. So there's not necessarily a place that we can start. So whenever you have something, it flows in. Once you have the art direction, it can flow in, and it doesn't have to be the first thing. Once you have content, it can flow in. Once you have research, it can flow in. So we'll talk about how we can build a process and a workflow where all of the things can flow in at the time that we have them. And the intention of that is to give teams a lot of liberty and not do a lot of gatekeeping around, like, well, until we have this thing first, we can't start or do anything. I just have not found that to be true. Whatever we have first, whatever a team's instinct is on what is the most powerful to drive them, I think all of those places are places that we can start. So I'll try to show you a process in week two, starting in week two, where you can actually start wherever. You can start if you have a design, great. If you have code, great. And I know for some of you, you're like, how can you start with code? And that to me is one of the biggest unlocks in design system. Is I'm going to show you, and I actually am a big proponent and would propose that most of the times we should be starting in code before we're actually starting in a design tool like Figma or Sketch or things like that. So it's a little bit flipped from what you might be used to, but I think this is part of the magic of design systems. So I'm excited to teach it to you starting in week two. So we'll talk about that pretty early.
I'm excited too. Incredible. Shay's question is around multi-brand design systems. Will we be diving into them in the course?
Not officially in the course. So similar to the question about like stakeholder management and things like that, that's a bit of an intermediate level topic in design systems, multi-brand design systems. So I'll be teaching you all of the skills that you can use to be able to create multi-brand design systems. That said, that will probably have to be extrapolated by you. You might say, like, you might learn something about how to structure something in Figma or structure something in code, and then go, I understand how I might apply this to multi-brand design systems. We won't touch on it specifically in any of the lessons. Also, that said, those are the kinds of things that I would encourage you to work with your mentors on, because they have a ton of experience doing that. And then also the industry leaders that we'll be bringing in for Q&A sessions and info sessions, they have a ton of experience with that as well. So use those things liberally, even though you don't get that hands-on training in the course with multi-brand design systems. Definitely lean on your mentors and the industry leaders for that. Similar to the next question too, Madeline, I'm going to jump forward here from Derek about design tokens and things like that. That's a bit of an intermediate level topic as well. We're not going to touch design tokens too much. We'll graze it in when we talk about tooling and when we talk about workflow and talk about collaboration, because design tokens are a good tool for collaboration. But in my opinion, the tooling isn't quite there yet. It'll be here soon. Figma has announced that, like, sometime this year there's going to be some design token updates in Figma, and then there's a lot of tooling happening on the code side as well. But I think it's still a little bit immature for me to be, or anybody to be, teaching it as an official way that we might do things. I think it's too subject to change. So we'll touch it a little bit. We won't go too deeply into it. But again, please do talk to your mentors and talk to the industry leaders about it as well.
Thanks, Dan. You touched on mentors as well as the industry leaders. So part of this course, I just wanted to tell all the audience out there that if you don't know, we have invited 4 incredible industry leaders to come and do like Q&A sessions and run informative sessions, taking a different week each. So we have people like Mina Markham, who is a staff engineer at Slack, Joey Banks, who you heard of earlier, who is a designer at Webflow, Afia Smith, who is a design manager at Epic Games, and Lenora Porter, who has worked on design systems at Skillshare and Salesforce. And these are really big hitting people in the industry who you have access to, who you could come to live and interactive sessions to learn from. So thank you so much, Dan, for inviting them and using your network here to invite them into our course and for our students. Back to Q&A. Owen's asking, will this course touch on with tools, which tools are best for building and maintaining design systems?
Absolutely. I am proud to say I feel like I punted on the last couple of questions of what we're not going to be covering. We definitely will be talking about the best tools for maintaining and building a design system. I will reveal my bias, which is I'm a bit old school, for better or worse. I tend to not lean on products for that, and I tend to lean on kind of tried and true technologies that have been around for a while. I'm a big fan of HTML and CSS and JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. We'll talk about some of the flavor of the week frameworks that are popular and kind of, seem to have some staying power, like React and Angular and Vue and things like that in code. From a design perspective, Figma is the new kid on the block and also seems to be the leader in that. Doesn't seem like they're going anywhere. They got a $20 billion investment or acquisition from Adobe, so that seems to be a thing, a good signal that we can start to teach that and start to build some process around that. So we will talk about those, and then we'll talk about some supplemental tools that they may change over the years, but I'll mostly focus on the techniques that you can use in all of these tools. So for example, for reference sites, we'll talk about tools like Zero Height. We'll talk about tools like Supernova. We'll talk about tools like some open source tools like WordPress and Gatsby and things like that. So we'll do a little bit of a lay of the land of tooling and things like that. That said, I tend to want to teach things in a way that's about techniques, in a way that will travel through as the technology and tools change. So we'll do a little bit of all of that stuff. That's my general bias, is like I'll teach stuff in things that aren't subject to change and then show you a little bit of how to apply them on some of the newer tools that are coming out.
Nice. Next question with 10 upvotes is around what we're learning again. And so Pavel's asking, will we learn process of creating a design system from existing UI, e.g. creation of pattern inventory, organizing components, etc.?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm going to also reveal my bias here. The answer is yes. We will definitely learn that. And I'll even go so far as to say, I think that's the best and potentially only way to create a successful design system. So, drawing some lines in the sand here, that I think that it's actually dangerous for people to actually be creating design systems from scratch, especially in organizations that already have tools and products and existing things. I think it's better for the design system team to be actually normalizing and centralizing the things that already exist rather than creating things from scratch. So that might be a little bit new to you. You might have no idea what I'm talking about or what words I just said. So we'll definitely, that's a foundational kind of fundamental thing in my approach to design systems that I've seen work and want to kind of teach and share with you. We'll be doing a lot of that work, a lot of auditing work, a lot of inventorying work, a lot of seeing what's out there and trying to capitalize and build based on those kinds of things and design based on those kinds of things. So that to me is pretty crucial in the path of creating a successful design system. So yes, we will touch on that big time.
Awesome stuff. I want to ask a question which we have had a lot of people write in and ask about, which is from Jessica. And what will the capstone projects look like and include? I believe there's one capstone project in the course.
That's right. There's one capstone project. So the capstone project is going to be, you are going to create a design system, and the capstone project is going to be to create the design system and use your own design system that you've created to make 3 or more products. Right. So it sounds like a mountain of work. If you do it poorly, it's a mountain of work. If you do it smartly, it actually becomes really efficient and consistent, and really nice things come from it. So we'll build up in small ways to the point where you can get to the capstone project. You'll have a couple of weeks for your capstone project, but that's the end goal, is how can I create a design system, or how can I arrive at a design system? I'm trying to be very specific about my wording here. How do you arrive at a design system that then can be reused in a bunch of places? And then the kicker on that is I'm going to introduce a change, a big change that you will then have to cascade through your design system. So an example of that might be, a rebrand just happened. You built a design system, you made a bunch of products with it, and all of a sudden your company decides to rebrand, and this change happens. How easily can you change your products by changing the things in the design system? That'll be the true test of it. So a lot to test there. If you can do that well, you will be ahead of most folks that I've ever worked with in creating design systems. And so that's going to be the goal, is for you to get to a design system that is ultimately flexible, very efficient to use, and figuring out how to balance between those two. So that's going to be the capstone project.
Wow, I am so excited for that one. That's going to be incredible. I want to take this opportunity. We've got just under 15 minutes left. If anyone wants to come up onto stage to do what I'm doing now, so on stage with your microphone on, with your camera on, ask Dan a question, one of your burning questions that you have, instead of just writing it, please do raise your hand in the question and answer portion of the chat. You'll see an emoji that will ping me and we'll get you up onto stage. So don't be shy. Would love to have you up here. Until then, we have a question from Renee about will we touch on system maintenance and governance?
A little bit. We won't do a ton with that. Again, that kind of relates to an earlier question about like stakeholder management and communication cycles around design systems. That's a bit intermediate advanced content. So we'll talk about it a little bit when it comes to documentation and sharing and collaboration. We won't go too deeply into it. We aren't going to do things um, like build governance models or explore governance models too much. That starts to get a little bit outside the scope of the course. We will talk a little bit about system maintenance, mostly as you're creating things. How do you create things in a way that can be maintained? And then, of course, the capstone project that I just mentioned, you are literally going to have to be maintaining your own design system. So even though there's not like a learning module about that, you will get that through the actions and through the work that you're doing. So you get a lot of that knowledge in that way. So lots about maintenance, mostly by action, just a little bit about governance, not too much formally there, but really just talking about workflow and where governance fits in workflow.
Awesome. Sounds like we need to create another course on the
I
intermediate
think
and
so.
advanced.
That's right.
Very cool. So this next question is from Charlene, and I'd like to quickly jump in here. It's about mentor sessions and what they're going to be like, and are they going to be the same as this webinar? So just from a purely organizational point of view, the mentor sessions are in Zoom. You're in a group of 10 to 15 students, so you have that real collaborative feel of learning from each other, of being in a network of other designers who are growing as well. So you are in a Zoom session every 2 weeks with your expert mentor. And these mentor sessions are used to not only allow you to speak to someone who's already in the industry and answer those questions, but they also go deeper into the topics that you've learned that week in the video lessons that Dan gives. So they're super interactive, but they're also like a lesson. So we put together lesson plans. So they are extremely in depth, and you get to dive into different topics. You get to design alongside each other and create design systems alongside your mentor in those 2-hour mentor sessions. They're held in Zoom, so they won't be like this. It won't be just like your mentor chatting to you. It's collaborative. During those mentor sessions, you could also get one-on-one time with your mentor as well in breakout rooms. Super fun, super engaging, and a real value of our course, the fact that we do run these. Is there anything else that you want to add to the mentor sessions, Dan?
No, I think that what I like about the structure of this course is that there are things that are self-paced that you can kind of watch at your own pace, which is the video lessons. And then I think the balance to that is having time with your mentor. So I think it's a really good split of things that you're doing live and things that you can do kind of at your own pace, at your own leisure, to help all the people who learn in different ways. So that's what I really like about the structure of this course is not everybody learns the same way. Videos are really hard for some people. Videos are the only way that other people learn. And so I think that we've structured a really good way between reading, assignments, watching, and then interacting with your peers and your mentors that hopefully it'll hit a lot of the things of the way that different people learn.
Totally. Yeah, this course is meant to fit around your full-time job. We're not expecting you guys to break the bank or, quit your jobs to come to this course. The way it works is like Dan said, you watch those async videos for those people who want to just digest, stop the video, fast forward the video, go back to previous videos. And then the live aspect is the live mentorship. I will say that in terms of scheduling, we know that people have full-time jobs, have kids, have got outdoor activities. So the way that the mentor sessions work is you pick the time that you want your mentor session. So when you come through the checkout, you say, I want 2 p.m. GMT, or I want 8 a.m. because that's before work. And then we do the work to match you with an expert mentor. So we're not telling you that you've got to be online at this time. We actually are super flexible and we try as much as possible to fit around your schedule. So you'll see at the checkout, you pick your own mentor session times, which is super exciting. If you have any more questions about mentor sessions or anything like that, just email education@dribbble.com and we can answer them for you. Okay, so from Selena, next question is, what do companies need to see when hiring designers for design systems? What portfolio pieces and expertise are integral? Good question. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, that's a great one. Thank you for asking that, Selena. Um, I think the most important thing, and as I've worked with teams to help hire design system folks and write job descriptions for design system experts, the big thing is to know that you can work at scale. A design system is a tool for scale, and it's a tool for change at scale. And so the challenge there is you have to show something that says I can work at scale in a really clever way. One of the things that's one of the reasons that the capstone project is designed the way that it is it gives you that portfolio piece opportunity to say I've have successfully been able to create one thing that affects three other things. So I think those are the kinds of portfolio pieces that I would want to see if I was interviewing for a design system or interviewing somebody to hire as a design system designer or engineer or product person, is just something that gives me confidence that you know how to work at scale. So I think that's the key word. Those are the things that you should show in portfolio pieces, and we designed the capstone project in a way to actually give you one of those things. So hopefully that's a thing that helps you get there. And then the more things you do like that, I'm a big fan of the rule of three. So I think if you can show about three pieces that show you can work at scale, I think that's a really good showing for an interview or for a portfolio review or something like that.
Awesome. So we do have one brave soul who is going to come up onto stage and ask you a question, Dan. So would love to invite Minjin Kim up on stage. If anyone else wants to come up, just raise your hand in the question answer panel of the chat. Take it
Okay.
away, Minjin.
Oh, yay. All right. Hi everyone. I'm Minjin Kim. I'm South Korean. I'm currently studying at UIC. I had a question. So I'm a global health policy PhD student. So as you can see, I'm not an expert in this whatsoever, like you guys. But I'm really interested in learning your language and your toolkit, and I just wanted to make sure if this is too daunting for me to work on this next February. Like, should I wait until I finish my PhD, or if I can work around it because you guys are very accommodating? Do you have any suggestions for people like me before the class starts? What should we do? Because I know you mentioned about having some knowledge about HTML tag and CSS role, but anything else should I keep in mind? And thank you for this very interesting session, and I wish the best for everyone in the room.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Can you stay up for 1 minute? I have a question for you.
Okay.
So what? Why are you, as someone who has a PhD in global health, why are you interested in a course like this? What do you want to get out of a course like this?
Um, so I really want to use the design system that you have mentioned. I believe it's a very powerful tool. And you said how it's a really good team sport, right? And public health, as we all have experienced COVID, that's where teamwork is most needed and much appreciated. But I don't think a lot of people in the global health field have this knowledge or the toolkit. So I thought if I could be somewhat a bridge between the two worlds, I thought that would be brilliant. So that is my goal. Whether it's hospital management, currently I'm working in the nursing home field. So as you can imagine, nursing homes, hospitals, paramedics, like everything has to work hand in hand together with government agencies and international agencies and people in the war zone, then you need to have better ties there too. So my goal ultimately is to help build a better system for everyone involved. Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for asking that question. Okay, so the reason that I asked that was I think your preparation would depend on what you want to do as the output and the outcome of this course. If you were to say, "Well, I want to be a designer working on design systems," I would say it might be a little bit daunting because if you haven't opened something like Figma before, if you haven't used design tools like that before, there's a learning curve there that you would have to get over that learning curve and then new knowledge on top of that. So it would be a little bit daunting. Same thing is if you said, "Well, I want to be an engineer or developer that was, that was writing code, to build design systems." Again, the learning curve wouldn't be in this course. The learning curve would be, well, you have to understand what HTML is, and then what CSS is, and then what JavaScript is, and then what React is, and then design system stuff on top of that. That would be pretty daunting to do in the time frame.
Hmm.
If instead though, what I heard you say, let me know if I misinterpreted this, what I heard you say was you want to be the bridge between those things. And to me, it's about understanding the concepts and the vocabulary and the
Yeah.
ideas in building a system. And I'm like, oh, this course is going to be great for you. I'm
Oh, really?
biased, of course, but I think that for someone who wants to be the bridge between a bunch of different disciplines and understand systems thinking, that is
Mm-hmm.
going to be really, I think that is going to be really useful for you, especially in week one. We're going to talk about what is a system in general before we even talk about design systems as software or identities or whatever those things are. So we're going to talk about what systems are in general. And I think that's the kind of stuff that's going to be really good for you. So to your question about what should you do to prep, I think my guess is what would be the most daunting for you is just knowing what things mean. So as an example, like if
Mm-hmm.
I say like, NPM, and you're like, I don't know what NPM is, right? You'd have to go detour and figure out what NPM is, and then come back and understand the lessons. What I would
Mm-hmm.
say is, in the meantime, from now until the course starts, I would
Mm-hmm.
watch a bunch of free YouTube videos just to understand how people talk about technology and design. So, I would look up, beginner web design, on YouTube, and find like a 5 minute, just so you can hear how people talk about it. Beginner design tutorials on YouTube or on Instagram or something like that, just to understand the language that people are using. That way, when you hear a term in the course, it might not be as unfamiliar to you as and then you have to go and research it on the spot. So that's what I would do if I were you to prep. If
Okay.
if you said something different, my answers for prep would be different. But if you're like, I want to understand these concepts, I think
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of just being around people who are talking about these concepts, and by being around, I mean like watching them on YouTube, is enough being around. I think that'll set
Okay.
you up well for success.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Much
thanks for that question.
appreciated. Okay.
Thank you, Minjin.
Thank.
We have one last person, Federico, who would love to come onto stage. This will be our last question as we are coming to the hour mark here. I know that all of you have got so many more questions in the Q&A. Please do write into dribbble@education.com and we will help answer them, just so you're as informed as possible before making that decision to take this course. So without further ado, I'll get Federico on stage.
Thank you, Madeline. Hi, Dana, everyone. I'm Federico from Italy. I have a question very quick for you, and I hope. Designing new digital products for a company in general. What would you say that would be the starting point? Would you say to start from design system itself, or first create a vision, for example, and then build around it something that can expand and support it?
Closer to the second than the first. I have maybe a third option to that, but one of the things we'll definitely talk about this. This to me is the most important thing that I can teach about design systems. If I could only teach one thing, I would teach it. It's called piloting, and we'll talk about that in week 2. How to pilot a design system, and what that means is, in design system world, we talk about this concept of a virtuous cycle, which a lot of people say, when you have a design system, the design system feeds your products, and then your products feed your design system, and then they just go in a cycle forever. The problem with cycles is you never know where they start, right? So when you're starting to do this, well, which one do you pick? And what I've seen in my experience is most people actually pick the wrong one. It's a coin flip, it's 50-50, and most people pick the wrong one. They pick design system first, and it makes sense that, like, in order to use a system, shouldn't you make the system first and then you can use it? And I've actually seen a lot of teams fail because of that, because it's hard to do. So instead, I suggest that we do it the other way around. If you're making a new product for your company, make the product. Like, you're already good at it. You're a good product designer or a good engineer, or whatever it is. You have the skills to do that. So make the product and then extract things out of it in order to make a system, right? And that's your first version of your system, is your product with things taken out of it to build the first version of the system. And then now you have an MVP, a minimum viable product of the system, that then can feed your second product. And then from that second product, you extract more things into the system, and now your system grows, and that's contribution. And then there's some governance, right? And then there's some maintenance in that too. So you get this natural cycle of design systems by extracting from products. But where do you start? You start with the products. So that might seem really odd to some people. We'll definitely get into that in the course, into the details of that. That's my most fun thing to teach, because I think it's so eye opening. It's just so different to think about it in that way. And what I can help with in the course is helping you figure out, well, what things do you extract? What criteria? How do you know? Do you extract everything? Does everything go in the system? So we'll put some rules around all of that kind of stuff. But to me, it's start with your product. You already know how to make a product. That's the point of design systems. Design systems are supposed to help you make product. So if you are stopping making your product to make a design system, that doesn't help your product. And so instead, make your product, do your designs, do your build, and then once you're done with that, then look at it and go, what of these parts can we extract into a system? What of these things that we just made can other people use too, maybe with a couple of tweaks? Right? I think that's a much better way to do it. So I would start with the product, and then I think you can create better systems from product than you can create product from systems.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Thank you, Federico, for coming up onto stage and for that question. That's all we have time for now. Thank you so much, Dan, for your hour of these super informative question and answers on your design systems course.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Madeline, thank you for facilitating all of this, and hope to see you all soon.
Hope to see you soon. We'll see you in a sec, Dan. Thank you to everyone who spent an hour with us just now. I hope you have a lot of inspiration in your heads at the moment and are super excited to dive into our design systems course. A couple of updates. Firstly, I'm going to be sending this recording around to you via email so you could rewatch it. And I'm also going to be sending you your exclusive 30% discount. I just popped it in the chat as well. So please do use that 30% discount. The course is starting on February 13th. So you have a lot of time to get up to speed or to get some finances in order if you need. We also are offering those bulk discounts for teams. So if you want to approach your company and say, hey, I want to take my team of designers to this course, then we could give you a steeper discount as well. So lots of opportunities there. Please reach out to education@dribbble.com if you have any questions. And we can't wait to see you in the course. Thank you for joining. And thank you so much, Dan. We will see you guys soon.